I remember the day Mark died with excruciating clarity. The way the morning light slanted across our bedroom, making the dust motes in the air dance like tiny specters. He'd woken me at 5:30, sweat beading on his forehead. "I don't feel right," he'd whispered, voice shaky. Before I could reach the phone, his hand slipped from mine. His eyes, those warm hazel eyes, looked confused and afraid, and then they closed forever. The paramedics tried, but there was nothing left to save. In the days that followed, grief became my constant companion, a leaden weight in my chest that no amount of tears could lift. Friends brought casseroles and flowers, colleagues sent condolence cards, neighbors offered to drop off groceries. I hugged every gesture like a lifeline. And through it all, I kept thinking, Mark wouldn't want me to break. We'd always been careful with money. Mark was the planner. I was the dreamer. He built our modest nest egg from his second job as a software consultant, tucking away every bonus, every tax refund, every unexpected check. I focused on the future, renovating our tiny house, adopting a dog, perhaps traveling abroad one day. Together, we'd been unstoppable. So when the lawyer called, our joint attorney whom Mark trusted since law school, to say he needed to discuss the saving accounts, I was too exhausted to be frightened. I thought the lawyer would say, "Everything is in order. The funds will be released to you as next of kin." Instead, his voice crackled over the line, hesitant. "Emily, I'm afraid your parents have requested conservatorship of Mark's assets and named your brother Daniel as the beneficiary." I stared at the phone as if it had transformed into a rattlesnake. "What? That makes no sense." Mark left everything to me, my voice pitched higher than I intended, over top of my own fear. "You have the will, right? The will says I get it all." He sighed. "Yes, but your parents are Mark's next of kin after you, and they've petitioned the court citing concern for your well-being. They believe you're too fragile to handle financial matters." My vision swirled. Fragile? I just lost my husband. That doesn't give them the right to take his savings. "They have a hearing next week," he said gently. "You'll get a notice. I recommend you consult with a family law attorney immediately." I ended the call and sank onto the couch, the world tilting. My parents had always been protective, bordering on overbearing, but never in my wildest nightmares had I thought they'd weaponize their love to rob me of the only security I had left. And to give it instead to my younger brother Daniel, his golden child, who by all measures had been more of a stranger to Mark's trust fund than I ever was. That afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with my own attorney, Laura, a tenacious woman with a no-nonsense bob and unstoppable confidence. Her office smelled faintly of lavender and old leather books. She listened as I recounted the conversation, nodding gravely. "Your parents are abusing the conservatorship process," she said, flipping through her notes. "They'll argue you're not in a state to manage money, but that's a flimsy claim. You're an adult, you're employed, and you were joint account holder on every fund." I pressed my hand to my heart. "He wanted me to carry on his legacy, Laura. We talked about me using the savings to finish the house, to grow our tech startup. Then we fight," she said firmly. "I'll file an objection. We'll request a competency hearing where you demonstrate you're capable. And we'll challenge their petition aggressively. They'll have to prove you're unfit, which is a high bar." I exhaled, relief flickering, extinguished by the thought of facing my parents in court. "I don't want to embarrass them," I whispered. She paused, gaze sharp. "Your parents are embarrassing themselves. They're stealing from you. It's not your job to protect their pride. Your job is to protect yourself." The next week passed in a dizzying blur of paperwork, hearings, and emotional upheaval. My parents attended the small hearing. My mother in a floral blouse, tears in her eyes. My father stiff-backed in a navy suit, shoulders square. My brother sat between them, face impassive, eyes distant. When the judge read the petition, they claimed Mark's savings needed protection from my volatile emotional state and would be better managed under a trust headed by Daniel, with my parents as co-trustees. They painted me as fragile, impulsive, overwhelmed by grief. I fought the urge to stand and shout, "I'm not a teenager. I'm a widow with a job, a mortgage, a plan." Thank God for Laura, who presented evidence, bank statements showing my careful planning, letters from employers praising my competence, character references from friends, even a therapist's note confirming I was actively processing grief in a healthy way. I sat at the plaintiff's table, trembling yet resolute, clutching a folded piece of Mark's favorite blue button-down, his scent still faint on the fabric as a talisman. After what felt like hours, The judge adjourned to deliberate. I stepped outside into courtyard sunlight, my knees weak. My mother approached, eyes red, lips quivering. "Emily, I'm sorry," she whispered, voice thick with tears. "We only wanted what was best for you. By taking away my future?" I asked, voice breaking. My father stood behind her, silent as a statue. My mom blinked, tears spilling. We thought you needed time to heal. Daniel, well, he could handle it. He's organized." Her voice trailed. "He's a wonderful person," I said gently. "But this savings wasn't his. It belonged to Mark, and he trusted me." My mother's shoulders shook with sobs. I wanted to comfort her, but anger flared. In that moment, I understood my parents saw me not as a woman who could marshal hardship into strength, but as a wounded child they needed to shelter. So they unintentionally choked my autonomy in a misguided attempt to care for me. The judge returned. His gavel rapped the bench. "I've reviewed the evidence. Miss Carter is clearly capable of managing her financial affairs. The conservatorship petition is denied." Relief flooded me so suddenly, I thought I might faint. My parents' faces crumpled, shame and apology in one silent expression. Daniel slumped into his seat. When we filed out, I lingered in the hall outside the courtroom. The corridor's arched ceiling echoed with the distant hum of voices. I looked back through the glass doors at my parents, still broken, still full of regret. I knew nothing would be the same. I had won back Mark's savings, his legacy, but I felt the delicate rupture in our family's foundation. How could I trust them again? How could I step back into the role of their dutiful daughter when they'd treated me like a child? I called Laura. "Is there anything else we need to file?" She laughed softly. "Nope, they have no further recourse. That money is yours." "Thank you," I whispered, staring at the courtroom doors. "Thank you for believing in me." "Always," she said. "Now go home and breathe." I stepped outside into the late afternoon light dripping gold over the marble steps. I held my chest, feeling the steady beat of my heart. Standing there, I realized grief was not weakness. It was love still deep. And Mark's savings weren't just dollars and cents. They were the hope for our future dreams. Finishing the house, taking that trip to Italy, maybe starting a foundation in his name. The wind rippled my hair as I walked away from the courthouse. I felt the weight of possibility return. Ahead of me lay not only the path to rebuild my life, but the chance to redefine my family ties, to set boundaries, to demand respect, to honor Mark by living fully. And somewhere in the soft dusk, I heard my mother's quiet apology carried on the breeze. I didn't turn back to offer forgiveness just yet. Instead, I looked forward, footsteps sure on the marble, and thought, tomorrow I will begin anew. I carried the weight of that late afternoon verdict with me like a talisman, proof that I still had control over my life, that Mark's dreams and mine would not be hijacked by anyone, not even those I loved most. But in the days that followed, the real work began, mending the fractures in my family, rebuilding trust, and charting a path forward for the future I and Mark had envisioned together. My first stop was the little gray house Mark and I had bought together, now heavy with both silence and possibility. I unlocked the front door, inhaling the faint scent of his aftershave still lingering in the hallway closet. Upstairs, I slipped into our bedroom, where the walls we'd painted a soft dove gray still held the faded shape of the headboard he'd built. On his nightstand sat the framed wedding photo, slowly yellowing at the corners. I pressed my hand against the image, drawing strength from that captured smile, and whispered, "We're going to be okay." Over the next week, I sat down with my parents one evening in that same living room where I had grown up as a child. The gold light of the table lamp cast dancing shapes on the walls. My mother, her eyes red from crying, clutched a cup of chamomile tea. My father, stoic but haunted, sat beside her, tie loosened and shoulders slumped. "I need you to know," I began, voice steady, "that I love you both. But your petition nearly took away everything Mark and I worked for." I paused, searching their faces. "You said you did it to protect me, but protection doesn't mean theft. I'm not your child. I'm a grown woman who lost her husband." My mother's shoulders trembled. "We're sorry, Emily. We were so afraid you'd fall apart." "But I did fall apart," I said softly. "And I got up, with your support, or at least with your house full of casseroles. You saw me struggling, you saw me cry, you saw me file paperwork and fight in court. Yet you still tried to sideline me as if I couldn't handle it. My father cleared his throat. We overreacted. We forgot that Mark trusted me. I interrupted. That he built everything side by side with me. I need you to trust me the same way. My mother's tears fell freely now. We do, she whispered. We're so ashamed. I nodded. I accept your apology. But from now on, I need you to respect my autonomy. If you see me struggling, you come to me and ask, do you need help? You don't assume I'm helpless. My father exhaled, reaching for my hand. You have our word. In that moment, I felt the last of the chasm begin to close. Not completely healed, but with a bridge laid from my heart to theirs. With the legal battle behind me, I turned my attention to the future we'd planned. Our modest renovation project, a small guest wing with an extra bedroom and a home office, had stalled for lack of funds. Now with Mark's savings restored, I signed a contract with the architect and gave the go-ahead to the builders. Standing in our empty backyard, I imagined the new wing rising, a space where friends could visit, where eventual children might play, where my own parents could stay when they came to see me. I also met with our financial advisor, a soft-spoken woman named Carla, who helped me reorganize the estate account. We established clear boundaries: the house renovation fund, a travel fund Mark and I had dreamed of for a honeymoon that never was, and a charitable fund in his name to support cardiac research, his way of turning tragedy into hope for others. At the dedication of the charitable fund, held in the sunlight of a small community center, I spoke about Mark's passion for helping people and his drive to use his own challenges to fuel change. I watched as my brother Daniel surprised everyone by joining me at the podium. He'd flown in from his home across the state, looking solemn but determined. Emily, he said, voice catching, I'm sorry about everything that happened. I never understood why Mom and Dad felt they had to step in. His throat bobbed with emotion. But I'm here now, and I'm ready to help, however I can. I reached across and squeezed his hand. Thank you, Daniel. I forgive you for your part in this. I know you didn't make the decision alone. We unveiled a plaque with Mark's name and the fund's purpose, and as we did, I felt the warmth of family solidarity I'd feared lost forever. The months that followed were a blur of construction dust, paint swatches, and structural inspections. Each window installed, each beam measured, felt like a step toward reclaiming the home we once shared. I spent evenings poring over floor plans, choosing furniture, soft, light fabrics that evoked peace, and picking out plants to brighten the new rooms. Luna, our golden retriever, inspected every corner, tail wagging, as if approving our every choice. One crisp spring morning, the builders finished. I stood in the new guest wing, an airy room with a bay window overlooking the garden, placing Mark's favorite armchair by the hearth. I set a framed photo of us on the mantel, the two of us laughing on a summer evening, glasses of wine raised. I thought of how he would have cringed at being memorialized, but I also thought of how proud he'd be. That afternoon, my parents and Daniel came for a housewarming. We stood in the living room, sipping lemonade, marveling at the space. My mother brushed her fingers along the new molding. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's everything you dreamed. I smiled. Thank you. Dad cleared his throat. Emily, can I? He hesitated, then tousled my hair. I'm proud of you. I felt tears spring. Thank you, Dad. Outside, the garden was coming to life. Tulips and daffodils, pushing through damp soil, buds forming on the fruit trees Mark had planted years ago. I walked out onto the porch, inhaled that sweet scent of new growth, and realized that we were exactly where we needed to be, carrying forward the legacy Mark and I had built, joined by a family who now understood not only how strong I was, but how strong we all could be together. That summer, I took a trip to Tuscany, a dream Mark and I had postponed too many times. I wrote checks from the newly reorganized savings account, confident in my stewardship, knowing that Mark's vision lived on in every vineyard's rolling hill and every sunset over the olive groves. I paid in full for my parents to join me, and watched as they walked through ancient stone towns with wonder in their eyes. My brother came too, and we laughed over late-night pasta dinners, sharing stories of home, and building new memories in a land we'd only once imagined. On our last evening, we toasted our future under a sky so dense with stars it felt as though it might fall upon us. I raised my glass and thought of Mark, of every plan we'd made, of every late night he spent crunching numbers so I could dream without worrying. I raised my glass and whispered, "This one's for you." My parents and Daniel joined the toast, voices soft with gratitude and love. And in that moment, I felt the circle complete, not perfect, but whole. A family that had weathered grief, greed, and misunderstanding, and emerged stronger, bound by forgiveness and the unbreakable promise of those who choose to stand together.